You're listening to
Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington. Way below acceptable. Way below acceptable.
On this week's episode,
again, if we look specifically at Black women, our wombs were a tool of capitalism. Why would we celebrate our womanhood? We were being taught to train our daughters to prepare for their bodies to be taken from them the minute they got their first cycle.
Way below acceptable.
Hey there, Sticky Note listeners. This is your host, Erika Washington. Recently, I was scrolling across social media and I came across a post that a friend of mine had made, and she was talking specifically about perimenopause and menopause. And it's something that I had been wanting to talk about on Sticky Note Conversations for a while. It's a medical experience that every woman will go through at some point in her life. So I reached out to the poster, who was Dr. Frantonia Pollins, who has been a friend for a good long time. And I asked her, hey, do you want to come on the show and have a conversation about it? And so I'd like to present a conversation with Dr. Frantonia Pollins about getting older. So a little bit about my friend, Dr. Frantonia Pollins. She's a global business strategist, a transformational leader, and a wealth empowerment coach. And she's someone that I've known a little bit more than 15 years. And one great thing about Frantonia is that she is dynamic. She's an advocate for feminine leadership and entrepreneurial success. She has more than 25 years of experience mentoring and coaching entrepreneurs across 22 countries. Her journey from homelessness and a single mother who survived a tragic medical catastrophe to building a six-figure business is one for the books. We're going to talk a little bit about her life, but we're also going to talk about the journey ahead and what that looks like. Thanks for listening. Question. You're born and raised here.
No.
You're not born and raised
I
here.
was born in San Francisco. I think my mother was just traveling through and went into labor. I've been here, raised here. I've lived other places and I always come back. All of my immediate family is here.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she just traveling through and was like, this looks like a good spot to stay.
I was like, yeah, how did I end up getting born in San Francisco? She said, I was just traveling and you came a couple of weeks early. I was like, okay.
Did you, so you didn't spend any time in San Francisco then, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was literally just to be born.
Yep. I can remember my furthest memory, I was probably 2 or 3 years old here. So I know I don't have any memories, young memories anywhere else. So, yeah.
So I know that you have done a lot of things in your life, but I wanted to ask you, when you walk into a room, what do you want the first thing that people to notice about you? Who is Dr. Frantonia Pollins?
I'm the unapologetic voice for women's empowerment in both life and business. Yeah, I literally am unapologetic about that. And for some people that's off-putting, but that's okay. That's for them to handle.
And have you always been that way?
Always, from the time I was a child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that come from your mom or where
Absolutely not.
No.
No. That's a whole nother conversation. No, it didn't come from my mother. If I have to be honest, that part of me came from my dad. My father was one of the very first Black casino, at that time they called them pit bosses. And then he ascended the ladder to floor man and then floor manager and then casino manager. And navigating the racism of Las Vegas at that time, he started as a room service waiter.
Around what time was this? What year?
God, this would have been
like
the early 70s.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Navigating the racism and they still had places where in the casino, in the hotel, where we could and couldn't go. And so him having to blaze the trail to get through that, listening to the stories he would tell when he would come home about how he was having to navigate the racism, not only from his employer, fellow employees, but the customers in the casino. And so listening to his stories and then him always plucking out a lesson. Don't ever let them see you sweat. Yes, we got to be, that the lesson we always get 2-3 times better than them. I always pulled things out of that. I've always been, even as a child, I'm an avid reader, but I would rush home. I remember when I was a teenager, people were rushing home to watch Luke and Laura. I was rushing home to watch Phil Donahue.
Phil Donahue. I'm just picturing him running around with his microphone. I always loved information and knowledge, and I was always the kid that would ask why. And it would get me in trouble because, we raised, you don't ask why, you do just because. But I needed to understand the mechanisms and what goes on behind things, which is probably what led to my study in my doctorate, which is metaphysical psychology. It's the reason behind the thing. It's the unseen. It's what lies in the subconscious or the shadow, right? And so back to your core question, I've always been the person that wants to know deeper, understand deeper behind the scenes. And for some people, they take that as a challenge to their authority, a challenge to their knowledge and their expertise. It really isn't. That's not my intention. My intention is to understand more thoroughly, to make sure that if I have something to contribute, it's worthy. And if I don't, then I need to be quiet. You bringing up the racism that your father had to wade through. One of the things that was a little bit shocking to me when I first moved to Nevada in 2008 was the history of the racism. I was never taught that. I don't remember Nevada really being much in the history books of anything they talked about in Michigan anyway. But what I didn't know that it was such a segregated town, in the 50s and 60s and going into the 70s. So once I got here and understood the historic West Side and, Dr. Ruby Duncan and all the different people who were battling so much during those times, it was all brand new knowledge to me. I knew nothing about it. And so it feels like something that I don't know if it was hidden or if it was just something people didn't think about, because Vegas is very good at promoting itself as what it wants to be. And what it wants to be is the adult playground for the entire world, to come here and have a good time, what happens here stays here. It don't really, but that's what, we market to tourists, and that it's all a facade, and it's a mirage. We use these terms, and it's literally, that's what it is. And then folks sort of stay over there. So they don't dig deep enough into the history of Las Vegas. They don't even see it. I told a gentleman the other day, at the conference I was at, which was on the Strip, and he was like, this was my first time ever being here. And I said, well, what do you think? He was like, I'm not sure. I said, well, leave this street. I said, I need you to leave this street and go explore a little bit. There's a lot more to this place than what is right here. And also, don't give these people all your money right here. Figure out, some things that you enjoy doing, and you might be able to find some really good spots here. There are some great spots, and I said, and there's some great, community and culture here. But you gotta go look for it.
Yeah, if you think about the time in which Las Vegas specifically was developed or created, and who created it. It came out of mob culture. Yeah. Right? It also came at the time when folks were migrating on their way to California for the gold rush. Well, Nevada, it was the silver, right? And so silver brought people here. And in the South and, back east, we still lived in a time when there was sharecrop. There were very few ways for us to make money. And so when the casinos began to spring up here, of course, they let us come here to work the back of the house, cooks, maids, housekeeping, that kind of thing. And so, as you were saying, with the history that you learn, our fight was getting out of the back of the house, right? Which is how, hotels and casinos such as the Moulin Rouge were started, because they wouldn't let us operate in the front of the house. We could be the entertainment, but we couldn't be the face that represented Las Vegas or the face that represented those casinos. No different than New York with the Cotton Club or places like that, right? Interesting story when you said the racism into the 60s, 70s. Keep on moving to the 80s. In the 80s, I was a showgirl.
Really?
I was the second person to be selected as Cleopatra at Caesar's Palace.
Oh, that sounds like exciting.
Now, imagine me with my chocolate skin being Cleopatra.
That's what makes sense.
What makes sense. And as the request for us to expand beyond just being present on the property during the weekends or special events, they began to bring in Cleopatra and Caesar on a consistent basis. Well, they didn't bring in other women that looked like me. They brought in a Filipino, they brought in a couple of white girls. And ultimately, each time that I would be seen by us, and we would take pictures with all the guests or whatever, they would make the statement you just made, right? They got one that looked just like us, and you look perfect. I ended up getting fired because I didn't look like the other girls.
They knew what you looked like when they hired you.
Absolutely, they knew what I looked like when they hired me. The hotel, as it began to become more popular, Caesar's Palace, as it began to be corporatized, they made shifts. They did not, you gotta remember, I was the Mickey Mouse we were the Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse of Caesar's Palace. We couldn't be on those photos going all around the world. They didn't want us in those marketing materials, or at least me. They didn't want my face being the representation of, so the racism in Nevada runs deep. It runs deep, and it's probably, in my opinion, one of the reasons that we don't see more of a burgeoning Black business space or entrepreneur space, or even more power in the hands of Black and brown folks in political arenas, because so many of us still operate from that they won't let us mentality instead of I'm gonna do what I want to do. Which, if I go back to what I shared earlier, I got that from my father. So I got in trouble a lot. I got in trouble on corporate jobs. I got in trouble in school. I got in trouble because I didn't grow up with that. They won't let me. I grew up with, I'm gonna show them that I can do this, and not only that I can do this, but I can do it better than them.
So you got in trouble for not staying in your place?
Absolutely. I got in trouble. And I got in trouble with all folks, even our folks, because for us, we were taught that staying in your place means safety. Yeah. Right.
Interesting. So I gotta harp on the showgirl for a minute, because was your plan to go into entertainment, or was that just a job, or what were you thinking about with that?
Here's what's interesting. I have been modeling since I was 9 years old. And at the time, so the modeling agency that I was signed with, God, I feel like I'm dating myself. So back then they had Ray Charles had I want to say Coca-Cola commercials, and they had the 3 girls. Yeah. And so anytime we would go to corporate events, of course, I'd go out as one of the girls. I would do runway modeling for high-end fashion designers. And then I would do extra work, or I would go fill in at different events if they wanted celebrity lookalikes. I did Whitney Houston. I did all of those things. And so I happened to be working on, and I need to look this up so that I'm better equipped to tell this story, but it was whichever one of the Rockies where James Brown did Living in America, whichever number that was.
Yeah,
So I was working as an extra on that movie. And the guy who plays Caesar approached me. And he was like, I know you're going to think I'm full of it, but you look like you're the perfect height and the perfect size for this job at Caesar's Palace playing Cleopatra. The girl that we have now is leaving. She's going to Paris. And we need to find a replacement. And I thought he was full of it. Because he was like, well, can you come try the dress on and meet the person in charge at Caesar's Palace on such and such date? Yeah. And I really thought he was full of it. And I had no intention of going. So I go home that night and I call my best friend at the time and I tell her about it. And she was like, well, I'll go with you. And if it's some BS, then you know, you're not there by yourself. And she went with me. I tried on the dress. It fit perfect. I started the following weekend. I had no intention of ever doing, Cleopatra. And amazing things came out of that and tragic things came out of that. Yeah.
You want to say more about that?
All I will say is I was the very first person to receive a scholarship out of the $20 million endowment that the Cosbys gave to Spelman College because I was able to meet and at that time date Ennis Cosby because at the time Mr. Cosby was playing Caesar's Palace all the time. And I just happened to meet his son, and from there things just,
Have you decided to write a memoir anytime soon? Because I
You know,
feel like
it's so funny.
We're 5 minutes in, and I'm like, there's a lot here.
There is. And you know, it's so interesting. I don't believe in any kind of coincidence.
Yeah.
It's so interesting that you asked that. The other day I happened to be driving down the street and I get a ping on my phone and a friend of mine sent me a clip of one of the young men that's on this season of American Idol. And so once I got to my destination, before I got out of the car, I pushed the button and I played this song, and it was the young man singing this song called Heal. And the song is very simple, but it was so powerful. I found myself in tears because I found myself reflecting on how much shit I've survived, how much stuff I've been through, and how only folks in my inner circle know a lot of the things that I have survived. Out of that, I believe I've birthed, you know, my business, both of my businesses, that of, you know, helping women to heal, and then that of helping women to take their lived experience and their learned experience and turn it into a highly profitable business. But it hit me because I think sometimes we just move through life and we get on the other side of something and we just go to the next thing. And sometimes it's like sitting down, taking inventory. Like, who am I today? And what are the ingredients that were added to me and taken from me, right? Sometimes this isn't the meal, isn't the 5-star restaurant. It's the stuff I could reach in the refrigerator and put together as a meal, right? On my journey to, my journey back to me, my journey back to wholeness. So yeah, there's a lot. I've done a TED Talk. In my TED Talk, I talked about some of the things I went through, but it took me years to even be able to do that. So as you asked that question, have I ever considered doing a memoir? I don't know that I've ever considered doing a memoir because I'm like, who's going to read a memoir if somebody don't nobody know? But I've deeply considered doing a podcast where I have really honest and candid conversations with people to get to know the interior of who they be, right? Because I think sometimes we can look at a person and how they show up today and make a judgment of them. This is my lived experience. People project, people make judgments, people dismiss you. You get uninvited, you don't get invited because people don't understand the makings of you, what causes you to move the way you move.
Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. But I think to answer your question about who would read a memoir of somebody they don't know, I think it's more about the journey. And, you know, if so many of us have been in spaces where we feel so alone and we feel like we're the only one to do X, Y, and Z, even though we know other folks have done stuff. But I know I've read even a small excerpts of stuff online of people, and I'm like, it really resonated with me. And I didn't necessarily know the person, or it could be a celebrity, and something resonates, but it's really just about the experience and talking about that collective human experience that we all have. I think it all makes us feel more human, or it makes me feel sometimes more sane to feel like, oh, okay, well, maybe I don't feel so crazy of, you know, the back and forth, of everything. And then, I know you have daughters and I have daughters and they're adults now. And like, that's a whole different experience which to, live through and be a part of their lives as we are figuring out who we are now.
Yeah.
And it changes so much.
Yeah.
And as much as people have told me that you'll change, it's different when it's happening because it feels so different.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, one of the reasons when I originally reached out to you about having a conversation was about the change,
right,
and talking about, you know, menopause and perimenopause, because being 45 and feeling like I'm in this space where my body is changing, and it feels also like my mind is changing, and so many things are going on. Yet when I have consulted with doctors, you know, I've gotten dismissiveness of, well, no, you might be too young to be, you know, starting perimenopause. Or gotten, well, yes, you might be starting perimenopause, and like, this is just what it is, right? But, and then I go to the store and I will notice there are so many items, like so many different vitamins you can take and supplements and all these different things. And you don't know what works and what doesn't work. And I'm sure some of them work to a certain degree for some people, but you could spend a lot of money trying to just find something that fits you.
Yeah.
And so it's this journey that feels to me like every single woman is going to go on it or has already gone on it, yet there's no real map. And that is what I think frustrates me the most. It's like, how have we been going through menopause for thousands of years, but we don't have a playbook for it at all?
Yeah.
Like, it feels like everyone's just like, yeah, you know, you could, you know, just get cooler pajamas and turn on the air condition and what have you. But it feels like it's just another one of those spaces where women aren't paid attention to enough. And so I wanted to talk to you because you had made a post on Facebook talking about menopause and perimenopause, and you wanted to put something together. And I'm like, she looks like she might have some knowledge. So I'm going to ask her, what has your journey been like with perimenopause?
You're listening to
Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington.
Let's get back to more conversation with Dr. Frantonia Pollins.
My journey has been horrific. I told a friend of mine the other day, I had natural childbirth with no drugs. And my journey in perimenopause and menopause has been worse than that.
Yeah.
And I say that because it's been prolonged, and there have been, like you said, there is no playbook. There's no one size fits all understanding of what this journey of menopause and perimenopause is, just like for any other phase of our journey in womanhood, to be honest with you. One of the components of my business is a rites of passage for adult women to help us really heal in the spaces that cause us to reject our womanhood. All the way from the time we get our first, I'll even say before we get our first menstrual cycle, particularly in the African American community, we began to demonize womanhood. The minute a young girl gets her first breast buds or gets, a couple of hips,
now
a little bit of hips, now you're being fast. Sit your fast tail down, right? We begin to demonize this natural journey of evolution and growth into womanhood. Many of us, the minute our daughters have their first cycle, we don't celebrate it and honor it. We sit her down and we begin to scold her for what her body is doing naturally. And the first and the only thing out of our mouths is, don't you get pregnant.
That was probably very close conversation that was had with me. And I made it a point of being so completely opposite with my children. I made it a celebration.
Yep.
If it happened during the school time, you got to take the day off. We went to the store. They could pick out all the different things that they wanted. We picked out every different type of pad, tampon, and all of that. And I made them a basket with, new underwear and chocolate and a heating pad and all. And then they got the day to do what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
My one wanted to go to the movies. I think we went and saw like a Tyler Perry movie or something she wanted to see. And she wanted a pair of little pearls to wear and a little dress. My second one wanted to go to the food court at the mall. And my third one, I think she knew I was a sucker and she took me to the mall. I don't know, she spent all my money. She was like, can we go buy this? Can we go buy that? And I think we need this. And she knew how to get me. But I really wanted to be intentional about celebrating this. Like, this is a celebration of you going into this space. And might be the only time where you feel like I'm celebrating my period, because it's always like, oh God, here it comes again, type of thing. One time we celebrating as if it's late, and we like, ooh,
right.
And then that's then you have your, that little celebration. But I really wanted them to, walk into it with that. And if they had questions, and knowing that we would, you can try Advil and this different kind of things. There's all different kind of thick teas and what have you. And I was really purposeful with that. But I hadn't heard of a lot of other people doing that. And so I think that's a part of that, celebrating our womanhood.
Yeah, I had never heard of it either. It certainly wasn't done for me. I was taught very little, even about how to navigate my monthly cycle, outside of what I learned in school and from friends. My mother grew up at a time when it certainly wasn't talked about. It wasn't taught. My mother was also adopted, and so I don't know that the family she was adopted into took that as a sacred right and something that they felt necessary to really equip the girls that they adopted with. When my daughter reached that stage, I did the best I could with what I had, didn't shame her, made sure she was adequately educated, but I still at that time had not evolved to the point where I celebrated it.
Yeah.
I, for myself, had stopped dishonoring my own cycle by that time, but I had not yet learned to celebrate it. And when I say dishonoring, it's things like, crap, here comes, Aunt Flo or Bloody Mary or all the things we were taught as kids, right? When we were younger. The other component of these phases of womanhood that we've been taught to dishonor is the moment. I look at two major things. The moment that midwifery was taken out of the hands of women and put into the hands of men as OBGYNs. And then the second one would be that our womanhood was redefined and redistributed in a way that the only value in our womanhood was seen in how it valued men.
Yes.
From the value of our wombs and us being able to birth children. And if we look at, just particularly in this country, and again, if we look specifically at Black women, our wombs were a tool of capitalism. Why would we celebrate our womanhood? We were being taught to train our daughters to prepare for their bodies to be taken from them the minute they got their first cycles. So it's in our DNA that it's a horrifying thing, right? Yeah. You can really think about that. Yeah. And again, this is where I say I go so much deeper than this is more than a hot flash, right? This is cellular memory, right? From the time we get our cycles and so that is part of why our elders would say to young girls, don't be so fast, because the minute you got your cycle, now you're seen as a breeder.
Yeah.
And so going through your whole life being taught that these unique aspects of your womanhood are a curse. They're bad. They're negative. They're cloaked in shame. We don't talk about it. Even pleasure, sexual pleasure, we don't talk about it, right? Your body is the tool that brings pleasure to others, not for you. You're not to seek it yourself. So when perimenopause comes up, many of us haven't talked about it for a couple of reasons, I think. It was never talked about for us, so we don't have the blueprint, as you said. The other thing is a lot of us are thrown into menopause early because African-American women particularly are given hysterectomies more than any other woman in this country, right? And so we're thrown into menopause and perimenopause due to surgery. Very few of us walk the natural journey to get there. And so we don't know what to expect. We have no idea what the natural journey of menopause looks like. So how do we celebrate what we know nothing about? How do we talk about what we know nothing about?
I mean, that and the same about this, that many of our parents, grandparents, great-grandmothers, they didn't talk about it at all anyway. So even those who may have went through it, I don't have any information. Like, I know for me, I don't have any information about the age or anything like that to know what my grandmother may have went through, or if I assume my mother had started perimenopause, but she died young. And so she may have been in the process. I don't know if she finished or not. But nobody talked about it to even know, like, so, because maybe some symptoms would be the same. Maybe I know what to expect. Only thing I can go off of is what I observed.
Right.
And I do remember observing, my grandmother talking about, like, being hot or whatever. And I observed my mother gaining weight, which she never had. And I observed that I feel like I'm gaining weight in the exact same way she did, in the exact same spots too, which is funny because I'm like, oh, I'm starting to be more shaped like her.
Yeah.
So it's very strange.
Same. Yeah, it's the same. Again, my mother was adopted, so I don't have any matriarchal lineage beyond her. My mother had a hysterectomy early. So what I recall back then, my mother doing hormone replacement therapy, I remember her giving herself a shot. That's all I knew. She was giving herself a shot. And at some point back then, a study came out that said, the estrogen shots were dangerous, and they stopped
because they were going to cause breast
then,
cancer.
just like you, I began to observe my mother gaining weight, and the mood swings, but as a kid, you don't know what that is. You have no idea what is going on.
Think your mama being mean,
right? Or worse,
right?
So yeah, I didn't have any background. So when it started happening for me, I didn't know what the hell was going on. I didn't know why my daughter was in her late 20s, I think. And I'm sobbing about not having had, but that I'm not going to have any more children. No, and I don't want no more children. Why am I crying about not having no more babies? What is going on? Right? Or body aches, or the other things, night sweats, and my hair started falling out. For me, my nails would be brittle, like all kinds of things that were happening. Memory loss. For me, when I say it was horrible, it got progressively worse. I could not walk straight. People thought I would be on. So just a little background, my business I run predominantly online. Right? I have clients at this point in 23 different countries. So I do a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of virtual stuff. My clients would be like, Dr. Pollins, are you okay? Dr. Frantonia, are you okay? What are you talking about? You slurring. What? So slurred speech, brain fog, couldn't remember what I was about to say. I could walk from my bedroom to my kitchen and like, why did I come up here? Insomnia to the point where insomnia is what led me to a doctor's office, literally on my knees crawling. I could not function, like to the point where I was jittery, to the point where I literally thought I was going to lose my mind. And it's what brought up.
And what did you think it was? Did you think it was menopause?
So I didn't know what it was. At the time I had been going to, at that point, a list of 6 different doctors. They were testing me. They tested me for a brain tumor because of the loss of equilibrium. I would run into walls, slurred speech. I would get so exhausted. If I were driving down the street, I'd have to pull over sometimes just to rest. Walking would exhaust me. So first they're thinking, maybe there's something neurological going on. So they did all kinds of brainwave tests. They did, brain scans and all that. Nothing. Then the next thing, my iron levels and my blood levels would drop so low. They're like, well, maybe she has a bleeding ulcer. Maybe that's what's contributing to all these other things. And sidebar, at that time, the majority of my doctors were men. All except my OBGYN. The majority of my doctors at that time were men. And so they did all these tests. They did I have to swallow this pill cam and colonoscopy, all that stuff. Nothing. They said, oh, you're iron deficiency, anemia, take an iron pill. I'm like, yeah, but that's not helping all this other stuff. Right? I'll never forget one time, this was pre-COVID. A good friend of mine came into town. Our ritual was to go to the Red Rock Casino for a breakfast buffet. We go to the buffet. By now, I'm in perimenopause. I'm probably 10 months in. So, the marker is 12 months without a cycle. You're technically in menopause.
Yep.
So I'm perimenopause. I'm probably 10 months in. He and I go to the buffet. We get through the line. They seat us, and I get this sharp pain in my pelvic area. And it came out of nowhere, and then it got intensively worse. And I said to him, I need to go to the restroom. I don't know what's going on. I need to go to the bathroom. I remember leaving the buffet, going to the restroom. The next thing I remember is waking up to the smelling salt with the paramedic and waking up in a pool of blood. I'd passed out on the floor in the bathroom. And I guess somebody saw me in the bathroom that saw me at the buffet and went and told my friend. My friend, they thought I was his wife. Your wife is passed out, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So they take me to the hospital. I ended up staying in the hospital a couple of days. They ran every test, couldn't figure that out. And I had such a dismissive doctor. And he said, it just looks like you had a bad period. I said, did you read all the...
Because we pass out.
Right.
When does that happen?
And it was at that point, the very next thing I ended up having as a symptom was, at that time I was still working in the beauty industry. I got a frozen shoulder. I couldn't do this. I could not touch my forehead. My shoulder would feel like somebody was ripping it out, let alone this, right? I couldn't do any of that, right? They sent me to an orthopedic doctor. He does an x-ray, says I have frozen shoulder. They want to do surgery. And I was like, I don't want to do surgery. I looked online, watched a video of the surgery, and was like, absolutely not. You're not doing that to my body. Because at the time I was still working part-time in the beauty industry. I'm like, this is how I make a part of my living. You're not going to do this to me. So that, along with all the other symptoms, I literally felt like I was losing my mind, Erika. And as they compounded, depression kicked in, because now I'm homebound because I can't function. And something took me down the rabbit hole on YouTube, just researching things. What causes a frozen shoulder out of nowhere? Why can't I sleep? I knew I was perimenopausal, so I'm punching in all this different stuff, and up comes on YouTube this talk show with 4 women, kind of like The View, but it was out of the UK. And there was a woman on there that said her perimenopause symptoms had gotten so bad, she was on the brink of taking her life. That's how bad her quality of life had gotten. Now, it wasn't to that point, but I knew my quality of life was so bad, I could not function. And I kept going down the rabbit hole. I kept watching more episodes, and I kept looking at more stuff. And I called my OBGYN that day. This might have been like a Wednesday. And I called, and I remember them saying, our next available appointment is next week on Thursday. I said, I'll take it. 2 days later, so that was a Wednesday. That night I didn't sleep. That Thursday night I didn't sleep. This would have put me at 11 nights straight with 0 sleep.
Holy crap.
That Friday morning, I got up, I got dressed. I knew her office opened at 9. I was at the door at 8:15. And I went in that office on that Friday, and I said, Dr. Martha, I know I don't have an appointment, but I will sit here till you can see me, because if I go back home, I'm going to lose it. I haven't slept in 11 days. I know this is perimenopause. Now I've done enough research. I'm so grateful to this doctor, because she's one that will work with me and listen to me and hear me, and she is deeply invested in getting more information and knowledge on menopause and perimenopause. But it was a horrible experience for me. And it has gotten slightly better. I'm now, utilizing bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. And I know people have their feelings about that. I will tell you this, if I weren't using it, I wouldn't be able to function. I literally wouldn't be able to function. And so from that perspective, I'm telling everybody I can. I am doing everything I can to remove the cloak of shame. Hence, you saw my post on social media.
You're listening to
Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington.
How are you being impacted if you're a woman entrepreneur? How is it affecting how you're showing up in your business? How's it impacting your energy levels? How's it impacting how you want to deliver your product or service? What I did premenopausal I had all the energy in the world. I don't want to do none of that.
And I think that was one of my biggest flags, is that I felt like I used to have so much energy, right? And I didn't equate it to having anything to do with that. You know, I equated it with a lot of other things. And I'm like, you know, I used to have more.
Let's get back to the conversation.
More get up and go. Like it's gone. And, you know, sometimes it's just hard to just like drag yourself through the day. So then you think about, oh, I'm not eating well enough, or I need to take new vitamins, you know, maybe it's iron deficiency, whatever it is. And not to say that you couldn't eat better, you know, but it's more than just that. The brain fog is a thing, right? Yeah. Sometimes I'm just like, I don't know what I'm saying. Yeah. I don't know what I'm thinking about.
Imagine being in company of other people, or running a corporate meeting, or they've hired you as their consultant, and you can't remember what you were talking about. You begin to feel a kind of way about, you know, your own expertise, your own ability, especially when you don't know what it is. You're wondering if they're thinking you're on drugs or something. Like it could be any number of things. And so to your point where you're like, it's more than just the diet or whatever. I just began to do a deep dive. Like, what is the function of estrogen in the body for a woman beyond the ability for me to use my womb to populate this world? What is the function of it for me? I teach this principle called sacred selfishness, right? It's a principle where I teach women, beyond what we've been taught by the broader society, you are to be your number one priority above everyone else, including your children. And for so many people,
why is that so hard for us to do?
Girl, that's a whole nother. A lot of it is social conditioning. A lot of it is programming. From early on, we're taught that our value and worth is in the roles that we play in service to other people, right? And so if I can be the best mom ever, right, the world will see me as a good person and you know, celebrate that. If I can be the best wife or lover ever, then he will think I'm so wonderful. Then I'll get mine on the back end. Like it's a weird thing that we're taught. We're taught it. We're taught it directly through conversations that the elder mothers have with us. We're taught it through, especially right now, through the you know, the cesspool of certain podcasts that so many of us are wading through.
I have a sticker on a water bottle that says "Ban Male Podcast."
Listen, I need them to put the highest damn tariff ever on their microphones.
There's a lot of weird information.
And you know, we say that, and I'm serious, and they grow up in the same toxic teachings and conditionings that we grow up in.
Sure.
And the only part of it, the other side of it, is that they're taught that their toxicity benefits them, right? While it is depleting.
Because they're showing leadership.
Right, because they're showing leadership. It's depleting and diminishing to us. So I teach that principle because I want women to understand that out of the well that is all that you've been infilled with, you must serve yourself first, right? And it just feels and seems and comes across to so many women as so counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Now, something happens when we hit this phase of menopause, though. That whole I don't give a shit. I'm out of fucks to give shows up. And part of it, I believe, is this internal reconciliation. We begin to like a checks and balance.
And why is my cup still empty?
We start to see significant, what they call silver and gray divorces initiated by more women than men. Kids are grown. I'm not putting up with this shit no more.
Yeah.
There's got to be more to life than this. Is one of the, like, if I had $1 for every time I hear women say that, there's got to be more than this. Women wake up to the idea that they can, in their own lives, matter beyond the roles they play in service to other people.
Yeah, I mean, and that makes so much sense because I think about being a mother and how much I love being a mother. I enjoy I enjoy my now tax-paying voters, you know, and I enjoy seeing their life turn into wherever it's going to go. And I was never one of those helicopter moms or one who my whole identity was being a parent, but it still was so much of me, right? And then I have my job and my work, and it all means so much to me, and it is a part of me because I do something that I enjoy doing, and I'm doing something that I think matters in a grander scheme of things. But then it's like, okay, now what else? And so I feel like that's where I am. I'm in this, what else should I be doing right now? And what else should I be thinking about? Because now I actually have a little bit of time, you know, to do those things and to explore and figure out who I am and what I want to do, and it not concern anybody else. Like, I don't have to ask permission. I don't have to wait for, you know, see what the kid's schedule is going to be like and like work around that. Like, I literally actually have like full autonomy that I don't think that I've ever had before. And it's so interesting. And it's also, it's something I don't think I knew was going to happen. So I don't quite know what to do with it. Yeah. And so it's like, it's not that I didn't know they weren't going to grow up, but I didn't know that I was going to have like a yearning to want to figure out something new. And so because I'm good at planning out my life or what have you. And so I still have work and I have friends, but I'm like, no, I got this spot here that I could be doing something else. Besides, you know, trying to look for new bamboo pajamas that, you know, help with night sweats.
Right, with night sweats,
which is also very helpful. But there's like so much more to life that we could explore.
Well, but if you look at womanhood and the way that it is, if you imagine it like if they were to put together a television commercial for newborn baby girls, right? And it walks through the journey of motherhood and is sold to us and packaged the way that we have all been socially conditioned to see it. Nowhere does anybody ever tell you to put yourself first. Nowhere does anyone ever say, figure out what you want. Know who you, and this was the message I gave my daughter. Know who you are, and any young girls that I've ever mentored, know who you are before you're anyone's wife or mother.
And I didn't do that.
Because we weren't taught that. What we were taught is your highest value is being a wife and a mother. Even now in the space of podcasts, that you know, that's the threat. You're gonna end up single. Well, I've never been married, right? So you're telling me that my value is less than a woman who has been married or is married? Absolutely not.
Or a woman who never want to have children.
A woman who never wanted to have children. A perfect example of that is Tracee Ellis Ross. We see so much negativity being hurled at her for making an empowered choice, right? Whereas men never get that hurled at them. They never get that. But our value is diminished because the way that womanhood is sold to us is you need to package yourself so that you'll be chosen, you know, by a man. We're talking about heterosexual relationships, that you'll be chosen by a man to be his wife and bear his children and make his life better, right? I even go as far as, and don't mean to offend any of your watchers or listeners, but even the Bible, he who finds a wife finds a good thing. Well, wait a minute. If I find a husband, is he going to be good? You know, will he be a good thing in my life? Right. You get what I'm saying? Men are not raised and conditioned that way. And again, it's social conditioning, it's religious conditioning, it's the patriarchal, you know, the way that society has exalted one gender over
it's the
another.
Language that is used. Like,
Absolutely.
you know, a woman could be a slut, and a man could be a womanizer.
Yep.
I'm like, what is a
or
womanizer?
Or a stud. No, he's a stud. He can. I use.
They can't be used up.
I use so in pop culture. One of the things I do in the sanctuary sisterhood, I use pop culture to teach women about how to decode these things. So we can use someone like Halle Berry and Common. Need I say more?
No, I know exactly
right?
what that
Need
is.
I say more?
Yeah.
Right?
Because
she can't keep a man, but he's a stud because he's ran through 20 of the top Black actresses or well-known successful Black women out there, right? And there's no part of his manhood that is ever diminished because of that. Right? And so if we bring this back to the conversation on menopause and how that phase of life is just another, it has been weaponized against us as women, you're old and dried up. Yeah. You're no longer attractive. Nobody is going to want, you can't make babies for me anymore. So what is your value in the world, right? Where a man can reach that phase and stage of life, he can have low testosterone, erectile dysfunction, and even the system that is the medical system will benefit him by covering all of his treatments under insurance, while the majority of our treatment for menopause and the symptoms of menopause are not covered. We've got to figure out how to pay for it out of pocket. Yeah. And so it's this, there are constant messages being delivered to women and from the time we're very young that there's no value in your existence, in just you being. And so that principle of sacred selfishness I teach, and the way that I see it show up, the light bulb going off for women is when they hit menopause. And usually the way it shows up is very similar to the phases of grief. They start pissed off that I've gotten to this point in life, and I might have had a good life. I might have had a decent marriage, decent relationship, great kids, right? But there's got to be something more for me, and I'm not going to live the rest of it like I lived the second half, like I lived the first half. Yeah. You're seeing so much of that, and a lot of the men are feeling blindsided
because they didn't know you might even been unhappy or wanted more.
They either didn't know you were unhappy, or because the blueprint of what womanhood is supposed to look like that's been fed to them is what their mama did. And so I show up like my daddy showed up, and you should be happy like my mama was happy. Right. Not knowing that mama wasn't happy.
Right. I'm saying, did you ask your mama if she was happy?
Right. Did you ask your mama if she was happy? Right.
Because there's a lot of that, you'll see on the socials of talking about, relationships aren't how they used to be, but people give up too easily. Grandma and grandpa stayed together no matter what, even if he had another family down the street and all these different things. And a lot of waxing poetic about things that, one, living through that time, you don't actually know the circumstances. You don't know whether or not she wanted to leave or could leave. I think folks forget that we didn't have autonomy and access to a lot of things until into the 70s. Absolutely. Going into the 80s to even be able to have a credit card or a bank account.
And buy property in your own name. Yeah.
So, sometimes people just didn't have nowhere else to go.
And the women that did find a way to leave were ostracized. So they had no communal support, right? They were ostracized and labeled and, it's so interesting. To the point of what you just said, I often think about, so one of my favorite TV miniseries is Alex Haley's Queen. And the reason that it is a favorite for me is that it explicitly tells the story of the woman during slavery. And to the extent of how much trauma she endured and how much trauma, we bring it to modern day, we are expected to endure. So to the point of you saying, on socials we hear, relationships aren't like they used to, particularly we're hearing it from men. My grandmother, my grandfather stayed together X number of years, even if he had a family across town, or even if he beat her, or even if he was a drunk or whatever. We never stop to think about the imprint of trauma on the woman. And again, if I go deeper into that, it is even when you are, when a child is gestating, right? All of that goes into your cellular memory. It becomes part of your DNA. It is part of what they are swimming in the amniotic fluid, the trauma, right? And so you're birthed and the trauma continues in the family you were raised in. Like there's so much that we as women are expected to endure. And that's why I said, I think when we reach this phase of menopause, women are saying absolutely not, no more.
That makes me think about, when females are born, they are born with all the eggs that they're ever going to have.
Yep.
And so I always love that thought of that, we're all being carried by our grandmothers and great grandmothers and all of that. So I have carried, if I have any grandchildren, I've carried them all because those eggs are inside of my children. And so, but then also, so is the trauma,
right.
So is the,
right.
All of those imprints. And so it's a matter of like, then what do we do as women, as we are going through this awakening stage of perimenopause and menopause, and what are we showing our children on how to move through it without so much pain and so much trauma, and how they can help in celebrating this phase, because I was able to do it with their periods, like at least for a little while. I'm wondering, because right now I'm so in the thick of it and trying to figure out the day-to-day that I don't know pieces I might be ignoring or how I might be showing up for them, which I may not even be in the best way sometimes, because I also feel like I'm a little bit shorter with my tone sometimes. And I'm more tired, and I think I'm a little less disengaged even with them, and not trying to be, but also trying to then take care of myself. So it's that not trying to cause more issue while you're trying to work on yourself and try to figure out what the heck is going on with you, but also model for them what could be better.
So to that, I will say, and how old are your girls?
25, 21, and almost 18.
Okay. My daughter will be 37 in June. And it's interesting, the question, for me, it'll go back to the principle of sacred selfishness. When you're in the thick of it, you can't teach anybody while you're in the thick of it. Yeah. You can't. And there's something, for whatever reason, we think we should be teaching while we're in it, because we shouldn't be putting ourselves first. And so the first thing is take care of you. And that may look like having a conversation, what I call a conversation of renegotiation with your daughters. This phase of motherhood is different than the phases of motherhood that I've experienced before. And just like I had never experienced them before with each of you individually, I've never experienced this phase of womanhood before. Right? It may look like, and what you fill in those blanks with can only come from your level of educating yourself about what this process could look like. And again, it could be different for everyone. So it might look like mom needing more time to herself. It may look like me having to readjust my schedule because my energy levels are different. It may look like me having to come back and apologize more often than I have before. Don't mean to be short. In the moment, I'm dealing with this. Right? They're women just like we are. So they go through their phases and experiences of their cycle. Might be PMS, being shorter, not having as much energy as well. So the first thing is conversations of renegotiation. We renegotiate what this relationship looks like based on the phase of life we're in right now. Right? Renegotiating what I need, what you need, what I'm responsible for. Because if I trust that I have filled your toolbox, then I should be responsible for less in your life than I was responsible for before. The next thing would be, like I said, really diving deep into educating yourself. Because we can all, like this room could be full of 20 women talking about menopause, and we all have a different experience. It's like I used to say with childbirth. My childbirthing experience was so easy, I would tell people, don't ask me, because I don't want to set you up. Mine was so easy. Don't ask me. My menopause journey has been horrible, but I've been in a room with women that have said I've had no symptoms. Right? So educating yourself, knowing your own body, knowing knowing your own phases, just like we have phases, the phases in our, when we were still having our menstrual cycles, there are phases to this as well, right? Understanding how your body works. Understanding, I know I'm good early in the morning. That's when my brain is fresh. That's when I'm in my creative mode. I'm creating content. I'm creating courses and things like that. Then I move into, I know I can't talk to anybody, no real cohesive conversation before 10 a.m. So I tell my clients, I know y'all over the world, 10 a.m. I'm not talking to nobody before 10. You don't want to talk to me right before 10 a.m.
Right.
And then knowing that by 3 o'clock, I'm exhausted. I can't do anything that requires brain function. And so and I'm honest with my email list, my community. Hey, I've had to make some readjustments, right? I'm not currently in a relationship, but during perimenopause, I was being honest and having open conversations with our partners, right? Things are a little bit different. This body is working a little bit differently. Yeah. What I used to like, I might not like. Yeah. What I used to be ashamed to say I like, right? And just being completely honest. But this comes back to that first principle, sacred selfishness. And what that looks like here is getting clear about what is good and right for me in this phase of my life. And being unapologetic about not only requesting it, but requiring it.
I wish that I had grown up in a way of thinking about what selfishness really is and centering oneself really is. I just had a conversation with Dr. Tyler about that and how it feels, because, well, it's just naturally people say, oh, you're self-centered, or they're only thinking about themselves. And that's not a bad thing at all. And why we made it a bad thing, why that language was ever used, doesn't make sense to me, except for somebody was mad that they weren't thought about. But there's room to think about others. If we know that we have to put our own oxygen mask on first, then we know that we have to feed ourselves first and we have to take care of ourselves. But it's so hard to break that cycle and just really think about what we need first.
Yeah, it is difficult to break the cycle because we've been. If you think back, however far back in your own experience it takes you, the first time you were chastised or scolded for being selfish, not sharing your something with someone else, right?
And I hate sharing my food.
So to me, I'm looking at the adults in our lives that create what is for me and create what is for my sibling. And then we don't have to fight about me sharing what is for me, right? Again, the handbook that's been passed down needs to be rewritten. Appreciate it and rewrite it. You get books that have revised versions. Yeah, that. Because they did the best they knew how to do with what they had, and it worked for them then. Our people in this country were coming out of pure survival mode, right? And so examining whether or not the way you're showing up, we're talking specifically about women and this refusal to put ourselves first, putting everyone else first came out of survival mode.
The survival mode, I think, is what causes so much stress with all of us, regardless. I think about that now and how I think my children were raised through my entire survival. I was always in survival mode while my children were younger, turning into adults. And so I really do love the soft life that people are talking about and how, we need to be in our soft girl era and our soft girl life. I really love the sound of that. I don't really know what that looks like for me, or past it being a hashtag, how do we stay in a soft life? Because there's so much stuff going on around us at all times, and there's so much responsibility that we seem to have to carry that I don't know if I know how that I've had the opportunity to even know what it feels like to be soft.
Yeah. So I have a slightly different take on the whole concept of the soft life, particularly the way that it's being sold on the internet. I think the soft life era for those of us born in female bodies should be when we are children. It should be the adults creating the life and protecting us in a way that we don't have to stress. We're not adultified early, right? We're not put in positions of responsibility for taking care of others when we are still children. I am the only girl. I have 3 brothers. Growing up, 2 of my brothers were in the house with me. The way I was taught I didn't matter was I was made responsible for them, right? And they could get away with anything. And if they got in trouble, it was on me, right? So this is how I was. And that came out of, my father's born in the rural South, right? That came out of, his parents were sharecroppers. So you had a big family. Everybody took care of everybody. The girls were put in the roles and the responsibilities that we were handed on the plantation. And so my belief is that the soft life should be when our children are young. And then when they move into the next phase of life, we go maiden, mother, crone, and then high priestess. That's what I teach. So in the maiden era is when you're, supposed to be in the ideal situation. Daddy's little girl. Dad is taking care of everything, protecting, providing, creating the safety. Mom's creating the nurturing. Many of us have been put in positions as single moms to be doing it all. And the part that keeps the roof over the head is being in our masculine energy, protecting and providing. Right? And so we fast forward, we go back to, I think this is why there's also a lot of the silver divorces. Women are discovering that they were being all of that in their marriages. You hear about a lot of married single moms?
Yes.
Okay. You hear about a lot of married women who are solely responsible for all of the functioning of the household, along with working their jobs. And I think that is where women are trying to recoup that soft life that you're talking about. My philosophy on that is, do all of the work that you need to do to heal. So perimenopause is the space of rediscovering what it truly means to be a woman. And for those of us who have had the opportunity to be intentional about that, in this space is where I heal all of the things that happened prior to that. All of the things that disconnected me from the beauty and the glory and the majesty and the magic of womanhood. Right? And the divinity of I am the only being on this planet that births, that brings forth. There would be no human being on the planet were it not for the wombs of women, right? And even for me, to the extent of apologizing to the divine for dishonoring that gift. And then moving into a place where, soft life, if that's what they're calling it, but for me, it is sovereignty. And sovereignty means that I am aware of my own power and my own divinity to the extent that I take 100% responsibility for what I create from this point forward. That I stand in the power of knowing that I can create whatever it is that I desire, and that I can remove whatever it is that no longer serves me without apology. Because if it does not honor this blueprint that I've created for myself out of my own sacred selfishness, doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just not right for me.
It's just not for you.
It's just not right for me. It doesn't mean that it didn't have value as it served my life in a previous phase of my life. It just means it's not coming with me in this next phase of my life, whatever that looks like. So to the idea of the soft life, the way it's being sold right now is almost irresponsible, that I'm waiting for someone else to create this soft life for me. I talk about sovereign living. I have now had enough lived experience, harvested enough lessons from that I can stand in my wisdom, stand in the lived experience, harvest that, the value of that to utilize in my own life. And then from the place of filling myself up to overflowing, I serve other folks. I'd use this analogy. If I have a teacup and saucer, I never serve you from my cup. I serve you from what overflows into my saucer. What is in my cup is for me. And if I don't get to the point where I overflow my cup, I don't serve. We're taught to do the other.
Yeah.
I got 2 drops in my cup. One of them belongs to you. And that keeps us in a place of deficiency.
Yeah. No, I think that's beautiful. When did you have like that aha moment that you saw that, oh, I can do things differently, that I can be the center, and I don't have to give from my cup, if it's not overflowing? Like, was that past your 40s, or were you already experiencing that before?
It's been a continuum. Honestly, it's been a continuum. I mentioned earlier that I have a TED Talk. In my TED Talk, I talk about having a medical misdiagnosis. Right around the time I was 30, I was misdiagnosed HIV positive. Well, of course, when I got the diagnosis, I didn't know it was a misdiagnosis, and it destroyed my life. And so the diagnosis destroyed my life. At the time, I was engaged to be married and just living my best life. And the diagnosis sent me into a tailspin. The diagnosis activated a level of shame and self-judgment that came out of growing up in a super strict religious household, right? But the moment they told me they mixed up my test results with someone else and that I wasn't HIV positive, a level of rage showed up that exacerbated the shame, because I literally I went from suicidal to homicidal. And it got so bad that destroyed the relationship. My anger, my inability to move beyond the anger. And my anger was, yes, at this careless mistake that was made. But the deeper anger was the lies I had been told about what religion and what the externally defined womanhood that I was sold as a child. None of that worked for me. When I was in the height of this catastrophe, like, I couldn't lean on any of that. And none of the people that sold it to me were there for me. None of the people that sold it to me could tell me how to use all that crap you had told me about what it means to be a woman based on this religion I was raised in to help me in this situation. As a matter of fact, they weaponized it against me. And so that level of anger sent me on a journey. And that journey of self-defining has been the path I've been on ever since. And like I said, it comes in phases, it comes in waves. You get, because how closely tethered I was to that external definition, it takes steps to untether, to, test this new idea of how you see yourself in the world. Test this new idea of how you show up as a woman. Test this new idea around what you believe your value is as a woman, right? I was born into a world that told me the world was perfect. And then along came Eve and she fucked everything up, right? That's a deep program, right? And so it's been in phases. It's been cyclical. It's been in phases. It's still emerging. Yeah, it's still emerging. Because this level of awareness and this level of desire to continue self-defining is still met with resistance from women who have not yet come to that space. And so again, the not being invited, being uninvited, being ostracized, being judged, because for them, that definition is still a safe space. For me, it wasn't. It isn't.
Question, is your mother still with us, or is she? Do you have these conversations?
Absolutely not. My mother won't talk about any of it. My mother, like I said, my mother comes from a generation that wasn't taught it. My mother was adopted, and I don't think it was ever taught to her. And so there's still such a level of shame about anything to do with the body. So
even if she's gotten older, she hasn't had any sort of thoughts around wanting to change, to have some of these deeper conversations.
No, and it's still very uncomfortable. I used to try. I don't try anymore because I firmly believe I don't have the right to try to force someone to have an experience they're not ready to have. True. I have found surrogates for information and lived experiences. But I'll tell you this: a lot of the women of that generation. When I went through the misdiagnosis, I was living in Atlanta at the time, and my mother wasn't emotionally available for me during that horrific experience. And I found a woman who was a surrogate for me, but a lot of her programming was very similar because they're in that age group. They're in their late 70s and 80s, right? Yeah. That's the programming of the time. And so that's why I said it's incumbent upon us to first infill ourselves with the knowledge, and not just the head knowledge, but embody it. Yeah. Like really embody the information, really embody, now take it out of head knowledge into experiential knowledge and experiential awareness before you can teach it to anybody else. Because here's why I think sometimes the younger women are not receptive to us, because we're wagging our fingers. Right?
You telling them what they have to do.
Right. Instead of saying, baby, let me tell you what my experience was like. Like, they're more receptive when you say, let me tell you what it was like for me. This may or may not be true for you, but I just want you to know this, that this is part of the journey that me and so many other women have experienced, right? The lessons that I've learned, what I was taught that I wish I wouldn't have been taught, what I wasn't taught that I wish I was taught, instead of saying, girl, you need to do this, that, and the third, when they've watched us as we were going through the survival mode, not do none of the shit we telling them to do right now, right? And so I think that we can only come from that place when we're willing to be honest and have vulnerable and candid conversations ourselves. So to this generation of women that are in perimenopause and menopause, one of the things that I think is keeping us from healing more emotionally, spiritually, even physically, is that we aren't telling the truth about a lot of stuff. We're just not. We are still conditioned in our society that what it looks like on the outside is the most important thing. Yeah. And so I got pushback from a lot of people when I started sharing. I'm like, I have a couple of posts on Facebook. I'm like, menopause has been horrible for me. And I've had people, particularly in my field, like, as a coach, you can't say that. How come I can't say that?
And so what are they saying is the reason why you can't say that?
Well, because we've been taught to only show the highlight reels. You see social media, people are out there.
But do they think that, like even that you would lose business or something? Or like what would be the reasoning?
So the answer to that, because I'm a metaphysician, I'm going to give you the external answer and the internal answer. The external answer is yes, they think I would lose business. Because in certain industries, you're only supposed to talk about the lighter side of life. Right? You're not supposed to talk about any struggle or whatever. That's what church and testimony services is for, right? Yeah. The internalized reason is a projection. The projection is that they would not work with me. They would not hire me because they know that in my ability to have that level of vulnerability about my own lived experience is going to be part of the process that I walk you through to get you to whatever outcome and goal you want. And they're not ready to have that experience. Because I'm that person. Any of my clients would be like I've had people that'll tell people, oh, go work with her, but don't go work with her if you're not ready to, right? Or people that'll say, she walked me through the darkest period of my life and helped me create, a business or helped me create a better experience in my own life. But it is that level of honesty and vulnerability. And I think a lot of that can only come from a place of that sovereignty. I'm sovereign because I self-defined. I took all of the crap. I took all of the lived experiences. I took all of the judgments. I took all of and I self-defined. And every day I refine my own self-definition.
In your work, in your workshops, are you also helping women advocate for themselves, like when they go to the doctor and to say what they need or what treatments or tests they want done, that sort of thing, when we're talking about menopause specifically?
Yeah, so specific to advocating for themselves, I teach that in all areas of your life. As I have began bringing in the conversation of menopause and perimenopause and health and things like that, absolutely, because a lot of the stuff that I share in my communities and with my clients, a lot of it is outside of what folks would see as traditional medicine. A lot of it is going to be outside of, again, I'm breaking the mold of somehow we handed over midwifery and reproduction to men. I am breaking the mold of your body is only of value in service to populating the world or pleasuring men.
Also a service into making money for other folks.
Absolutely. And so the conversations I'm having with them is ask deeper questions. Do not just take what they're telling you, like this is how it's been. Do not imagine at 42 years old, I started experiencing all these major symptoms. You tell me that the next 40 years of my life is going to be this? You tell me that's just what it's got to be? Absolutely not. Not when I'm watching other women older than me living vibrant lives, right? Having exciting lives. They don't have the weight gain. There's something that is available. There's something that is being done differently. I started looking at women in other countries. So I advocate to my own, I teach my customers and my clients to advocate for themselves from that perspective. And that usually starts, again, with the self-definition and whether it's the life you want or the business you want. Go find the example. The minute you find the example, you can no longer say it can't be done. The minute you find somebody that has done, it's like the 4-minute mile, right? The minute one person does it, you can no longer say it can't be done. So rest in peace to Suzanne Summers, because back in the day, they thought she was batshit crazy.
And you know what? I thought about that. Like, I really remember her trying to advocate and talk about menopause. And they're like, why are you talking about this? Like, why are you even bringing this up? And now Halle Berry's doing a lot of that same work too.
Absolutely. Halle Berry's doing a lot of that same work as well. And it's interesting because, and this is where we're unfortunately living in a time where reproductive rights are under attack, medical rights for women are under attack. We are going to have to advocate. We're going to have to, we might have to go back to oral tradition, sharing what works, making referrals and recommendations to each other about what has worked for each of us, going back to herbalism and figuring out what works there, because our reproductive rights and pharmaceuticals are under attack. And I will never not say, if it were not for the hormone replacement therapy that I'm using, I would not be able to function. You wouldn't even be able to have a coherent conversation with me. And then the last thing, because you were asking me about, do I teach them to advocate? The other thing that I teach them to do is be gentle with yourself, and then be honest, open, and vulnerable in your conversations with your partners. Because I think there's a space where our lack of knowledge becomes weaponized against our partners at times if we do not invite them into the conversation, invite them into the experience. And that comes from removing the shame, right? There are lots of men I see online advocating on behalf of their wives and their partners as they're walking the journey of menopause with them.
Yeah, that's really important too. Well, thank you. I knew that this would be a really good conversation. I knew that it's a really important conversation, and it's a conversation that needs to keep happening. Because this is just like a piece of it. When I heard that there were like over 150 symptoms of perimenopause, that's a lot of podcast episodes. So I'd like to see you start that podcast and talking about all of the things, because I don't know that there's not enough airtime for all of us to learn and understand what's happening with our bodies. I feel like I'm ready for the adult sex ed class now. We sit with the VCR and you're what's happening with our bodies now?
Yeah, so I have a class. It's so funny. Somebody put up a post yesterday about how their mother didn't shame them when they found that they were having sex. And it just brought back to my memory. In 2015, I taught a class, What Your Mother Never Taught You About Women, Sex, God, and Money. Because I don't think the primary focus of my business is entrepreneurship. I think that when women empower themselves financially through entrepreneurship, it opens up unlimited doors of freedom to us. As you spoke about earlier, a lot of why our foremothers stayed in abusive relationships or whatever was they were financially unable to leave.
Yeah.
And so all of my my business focuses on entrepreneurship. But there was a certain time when I got so sick and tired of going to conferences about women's entrepreneurship or women's empowerment. Like, y'all talking about everything but the woman.
Right.
I got to bring this body into this business, into this experience, into
Your
the
whole self.
Right, my whole self. And I literally created a conference called Healing the Whole Woman, Mind, Body, and Business. And so we can no longer live our lives in a way that we fragment and separate ourselves from the wholeness of who we are as women, right? And so to the point you were making about, lots of podcast episodes are having that conversation. I think that we have to get out of the place where we disjoint our lives, because I think it's just creating so much frustration for us. My conversations are holistic. They are bringing every aspect of what it means to be a woman entrepreneur and a woman leader into your lived experience.
I think that makes complete sense.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of telling my staff also, we bring our whole selves to work. So if there's crap happening at home, you bring that to work with you. And it's hard you can't separate the same way you take work home with you because it's heavy in that way. But and being a mother and being a daughter and being all these different things, those are all part of my skill set too, on how I problem solve and make things happen. So we have to bring our whole selves to our everyday, all the time, and be unapologetic about it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
And I am grateful that you are teaching folks how to do that on a regular basis.
Thank you.
So I will make sure that we have all of the information so folks can reach out to you and find out when you're doing your next class and all of that. We'll have it in the show notes online. But if anybody wants to follow you now on socials, are there socials where folks can follow you?
I'm Dr. Frantonia everywhere.
Okay.
So at Dr. Frantonia on all major social media.
All the things.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And this book is available?
That book is available.
One Powerful Question.
Of course, on Amazon and on my own website. What's so interesting, that wasn't intended to be a book. Real quickly, back in 2009, I used to, every morning, I still do. I meditate every morning. Out of meditation, I would, whatever downloaded, I would post it on Facebook. It wasn't even called One Powerful Question back then. I can't remember what it was called. But I would post it on Facebook every day, and people started following it. And all of a sudden, one day, somebody was like, "Well, where is the book coming? Well, you should turn this into a book."
Yeah.
And I tell that story often because literally within 30 days, I hired somebody from Fiverr, and I said, go through my social media, harvest all of these, put them in a Word doc, and then I turned it into a formatted book. I share that story because I want women to know, and this is something I firmly believe, there isn't a woman on the planet that does not have a talent, skill, or ability that she cannot monetize to help her get herself in a better situation. That came out of my morning meditation.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And that is very true. We all have a skill set.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. I
Thank you for
appreciate
having
for
me.
being on Sticky Note Conversations.
Thank you for having
on the
me.
fly. How long was that? Because I feel like okay, I'm about to say, you just don't let me talk forever.
Thanks for listening to Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington. Hosted and executively produced by Erika Washington. With editing by Black Gypsy LLC and Simone Endres. Special thanks to KUNV 91.5 in Las Vegas. This show is powered by Make It Work Nevada, a project of Tides Advocacy. And a special thank you to Grove GT Teague and Eno Savad, who made our new theme song, Way Below Acceptable.